Home birth is safe, just as hospital birth is safe. Hi, my name is Amifa Kebe-Kamara, and I had a home birth after 2 cesarean sections. This podcast exists to spread the good news that home birth is both a legal right and a genuine option for many families, especially in the UK. In this podcast, you will find a mix of home birth stories, research, and professional insights into pregnancy-related topics. Even if ultimately you have your baby somewhere else, simply planning a home birth can bring benefits during pregnancy, birth, and the newborn phase. Take these conversations as inspiration, information, or even entertainment, but they are not a substitute for medical advice. I wish you a peaceful pregnancy, an orgasmic birth, and a newborn phase full of rest and joy.
We are used to hearing the mother's side of the story when it comes to birth, but in this episode, Michael takes us on his journey from feeling like a backup dancer in the birthing space to embracing his vital role in making it a sacred space. This helped ensure his wife Natasha felt safe enough to have their first baby at home. At one point, the baby was blue, but with assistance from trained doulas, their free birth story unfolded without any crisis. In his funny, considered, and creative style, Michael describes how pure luck, racism, and intentionality relate to their birth story. He also reflects on how self-development and home birth itself gave him a confident start to fatherhood. I believe this episode will be both enlightening and entertaining for both mums and dads. Thank you, Michael, for joining me today. A lot of the time, our partners are so vital in the birth experience. How did you find being the partner of somebody who was pregnant?
You know, you watch the movies and you think it's going to be like that. But I think what is missing from the movies is the reality of imposter syndrome, self-doubt, joy for sure, feeling that you have to control everything in order to make sure you can be a good dad. So in short, I would say it was joyful, but I believe that every moment that you are in a relationship with someone, it calls for your commitment level to change. From friends to girlfriend, boyfriend, to fiance, to husband and wife, then to parents. And I think that at that moment, I was thinking, do I have what it takes to be a good dad? What is a good dad? How was I parented? What didn't I like? What did I like? What am I committing to being? And I think in this socioeconomic reality we live in, which is really difficult at the moment, I was anxious. It took a moment to realize that actually I can. And the best things that you do, often you have to step in with faith to know that you can do it.
Natasha has shared with me that you guys got pregnant quite quickly. So
Overachiever. Come on.
both of you, congratulations on that. The reason why I'm touching on that is because you just mentioned wanting to take the time to process things such as what kind of father you want to be, how were you fathered? How do you do that preparation when you only have 9 months and you're probably working, etc., etc.?
Well, I actually think the preparation starts from when you decide you're an adult and when you decide that you want to get married and actually be committed to somebody. I'm a big reader and I love documentaries and podcasts, so I'm honoured to be here.
Honored to have you.
So I think that actually it is all the lessons that you learn in life, particularly in adult life, that get you prepared for this moment. I would say it's been a lifelong or adult-long learning, and I read many books about relationships, about attachment styles. I think it's called A Road Less Travelled. I also listen to a lot of podcasts, particularly I listened to Through Line, and the title was Before Roe, a Physician's Crusade, and it was all about how men got involved in the birthing sphere. So I'll say actually it doesn't start in 9 months. I think it starts with you realizing that you have to play a role, which is to be a good man for yourself, a good boyfriend, fiance, or husband, and you have to do that learning.
I would 100% agree that preparing for motherhood or parenthood can start beforehand.
Yes.
And for me specifically, because I was aiming to have a vagina birth after 2 C-sections, my preparation for that started 2 years before I got pregnant. And I probably didn't realize I was preparing for it. The preparation started with processing the previous births, how they went, and I did that partly through doing a dissertation on people having during COVID time, and that's what introduced me to the home birth world. So would you say that these books that you read, particularly on how male physicians got involved in the birthing space in general, would you say that that impacted your decision to want a home birth?
Four pieces of content that I consumed. So I always listen to Throughline. Before Roe, a physician's crusade, and it was all about how men got involved in the birthing sphere. I thought, this is fascinating. This is fascinating. And then the next thing I watched was Breakfast Club, and Ricky Lake was on the Breakfast Club, and she was talking about her birthing. They did a documentary called The Business of Being Born, and I realized that, wow, the concept of a woman lying on her back, all these things just make it very difficult. And if you do take drugs, I'm not saying that you shouldn't take drugs, but I'm saying that if you do, there's always, as my mum says, there are consequences, yeah. And so to be fully aware of what those things are. You know, it could be more intense contractions, it could be you being numb from the waist down with epidurals. It could be a cycle of them having to give different drugs to either slow contractions or quicken contractions that have impacts on pain. So I thought, wow, this is not spoken, first of all, at all to men. That's the first thing. Men have no idea. Men are backup dancers when it comes to labour. That's what we've been told we have to be often. Then I met a friend of a friend of a friend, and it was so serendipitous how I met this person, because I realised that I did want a doula in our birth, because I know that I haven't been educated to be an empowered birthing partner.
Okay.
This education starts from when you're a kid. It should start from when you're a kid. But you know how they divide the boys and the girls up and tell people about periods and tell people about other sexual organs of men and what happens and hormones, that kind of thing. But we never are taught by the opposite sex. And so it's interesting to see that, again, that is quite a negative thing, because it prevents a man from being able to be conscious about the power of sex and the miraculous ability to create life and their role in it. Long story short, my sister-in-law did a styling shoot with an amazing woman who does scarification, 3D tattoos essentially, and that was like maybe more than 10 years ago. You know, saw the pictures, forgot about it. Then I told my then boss that Natasha's pregnant, and she said, I know some good doulas. I was like, I'm actually looking for a doula. And an email was sent, but nothing ever came of it. Then I went to a friend of mine, is Afua Hirsch, the presenter and author and just amazing woman. And I went to her book launch and I met this amazing woman who spoke a bit of French. And she said to me, you are like sunshine, Michael. I said, you are like moonlight. Just, you know, we had great conversation. It was just great. So we swapped numbers. Fast forward, it ended up being the same person that did the photo shoot with my sister-in-law, the same person that was introduced to me via email from my ex-boss. And I'm meeting this random person at Afua Hirsch's book launch, and she's our doula. I believe that when we are told a piece of information, we often go 180 and go the opposite direction. So, for example, people have a cesarean, they think, okay, I want to have a 1,000% vaginal birth. What is good for you is somewhere in the middle. Do you see what I'm saying? And you being conscious of having something somewhere in the middle. What I mean by that is, there was a great documentary podcast by The Guardian. It was called The Free Birth Society. And it looked at people that, in my opinion, have taken it way too far and have introduced quite exploitative, capitalistic concepts into birthing. And when you listen to the women, you realize that the same thing they're running away from, physicians not listening to the women, was the same thing that the birthing society wasn't doing, which was listening to the women. Do you see? So things like don't go to scans, things like your baby has to choose its first breath, you shouldn't be in any way assisting the baby to breathe. And I was like, and then you hear all the stories. Somewhere in the middle is what you need to be conscious of, both extremes, to make an informed decision, you see? And so that made me understand, okay, what role do I need to play as a protector, as a contributor, as a supporter, but also doing that work of understanding that on both ends of the spectrum, there's danger. Most people would find a value or principle that they're aligned with, but they wouldn't go and look at the extremities of that principle or value to know, when am I in the red zone or danger zone that actually I may be doing a disservice to me? And so, as I said, that those three pieces of content, the three positive things about vaginal natural birth, but also when it's taken too far and also becomes very exploitative. And I always say, people, please do go and listen to all these pieces of content, meet these people, listen to the podcasts, because you can make up your own mind.
A lot of people think the spectrum is on one end having a C-section,
Yes.
and on the other end having a home birth. When I would say to people, I'm having a home birth, I got responses such as, that's brave.
Yes.
And people don't realise that actually that's kind of in the middle. Maybe a bit towards the wild end of the spectrum, which is where you might literally be in the woods by yourself,
Yes.
without any support whatsoever,
Yes.
without having had any scans at all. That is the extreme.
Exactly.
Whereas home birth, the basic thing that people don't know sometimes, and I'm going to admit it, I didn't know initially, is that when you have a home birth, you literally have a home birth specific midwife come to your house. And this midwife, she is going to be armed with so much knowledge, possibly even more than those midwives who are in the hospital. She will know how physiological birth is supposed to progress. And as a result of knowing that, she's trained and has experience of knowing when your birth is going abnormally. So home birth isn't the end of the spectrum at all.
Not.
So thank you for highlighting that.
And can I just add something there? I think the reason why people don't know that is because people are not encouraged to even pursue the concepts of a home birth. And so the people that often are the loudest can be those people that are on the extremes. And you thought you wanted a home birth, but ended up in a random forest in a lake, 6 days away from civilization, thinking 6 days into labor, thinking I need help.
Yes.
And actually that is not what the home birth experience is. You have people with a vast amount of experience, but most importantly, a vast amount of love for you to carry you through.
So you felt the love in the room when you were there.
Listen, divine.
Same, we had the same doulas. I felt that love too. It just permeated the whole house. It was beautiful. If we were to look at you and Natasha's labor story and it had a clear beginning, middle and end, give it to me.
Sure. We started off at 7:30 a.m. with Natasha not feeling so well. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the contractions started and I was like, this is happening. What was interesting was previously one of my colleagues had given birth and it took 3 days. So I was like, my gosh, we are at the beginning of a journey that I don't know how long it's going to last for. But it progressed. She progressed quite quickly, I would say. We were using the Surge app, helping her with the breathing, things like that. And they were manageable. She was like, oh, I got this. Oh, and I thought, okay, this is happening. So I called our doulas and she said, okay, interesting. Good to know. Just let us know how it progressed. Now, I knew obviously we're having a home birth, so I thought, okay, while Natasha can handle the contractions, let me go out and do the last bits of shopping, because again, we had thought it would be a bit later. I think she was maybe 4 days early from the due date. So I went to do shopping and I wanted to fill up the birthing pool. Yeah. And I practiced this, but then on the day, as usual, the birthing pool hose didn't fit. It was like spewing water everywhere. I was putting a towel on things. I was having contractions in between. And I'm like, I need to get this woman in the pool ASAP. That was all crazy. We had a call with Kemi, the amazing actual birthday Kemi, explained how things were going to go down. So we felt really assured. I'm using a bucket because I thought it would be quicker to fill the pool up with bucket rather than it spraying all over the kitchen. Yeah. I'm cooking for the doulas because I don't know how long it's going to be. I'm cooking for the midwife. It got to about, let's say, 8 o'clock, and now the contractions are getting worse and worse. And I was like, I do not know. They're asking if the mucus plug has come out. We couldn't tell because, again, she's been in the bath, she's been downstairs. So eventually we get her into the birthing pool. The doula said, we are coming. They're from South London. We live in North East London. That is a trek because there's only a few bridges that will get you to North East London. It's the evening, people are going out partying, so we're like, oh my gosh. So I'm basically just giving massages to Natasha, making sure the room is set up with birthing cards, lighting, candles, all those kinds of things. And the doulas get there. They were very happy how things were progressing. I think they were surprised how quickly Natasha had progressed.
Okay.
I'm just trying to make sure that, again, she's comfortable and holding her hand, helping her with the breathing, things like that. She wants to walk around, so she does that. We're trying to get in a position that's comfortable and manageable for birthing. What was amazing with the doulas is that they were singing lullaby. It was amazing. They were playing the drums. They were singing. They were connecting, making sure, just helping Natasha breathe. I really felt that it's like we were in a den with your closest, nearest and dearest. So it was a beautiful moment, and I was just trying to make sure Natasha was okay. She's fed, water, those kinds of things. And we're just going through this process. And there's a point where I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on in terms of timing. So I was on a birthing board. She was leaning on my legs, facing me, and one leg was up. And she's actively pushing. But in my head, this is day 1 of day 3, whatever. So our doula, the amazing Sackley, was like, Michael, go round and see the baby. And I'm like, she's asking me to role play a scene. Because the baby's not here yet. Yeah, this is day 1 of day, you know what I mean? Of day 3. So I'm been thinking like, I'm going to be Denzel. Like, look, the baby's not here, but it will come soon. I look back and what I do see is a head. And it was so crazy because, again, they do not teach you these things. So I see the head literally turn around and face me like this. And I'm like, yo. And, you know, all I can see are black eyes because they dim lit room. She's quite blue. So I'm like, what is this? Whoa. And then the next contraction, Natasha just pushes. And I think it's going to be slowly. But no, the whole baby comes out. So I literally put my hands there and I catch Niobe, my daughter. So I just break her fall on the floor because it was such force. I was told to give her front waist to Natasha. Natasha was like, oh, my baby. She was still a bit blue. So Natasha sort of sucked the mucus out of her nose. And we were just so joyful that we have a baby now. She was still a little bit blue. So I remember I was given Niobe. And the doula said, okay, Michael, can you suck her nose? The men in the room, you understand. We haven't carried the baby for 9 months. So my head was like, suck. Do we really have to? For like, that was like 2 seconds. And I was like, we are going in. We are doing this. I was like, Natasha sitting there, the placenta is also birthed. Then we called the midwife. We actually had a free birth. I didn't know it was a free birth, essentially, because we were having such a beautiful experience. We just didn't need to call. So we called the midwives. They came, they inspected the placenta. They were very happy how everything went. And then essentially we were in bed. Baby was born like 3:30 a.m. and then we were in bed by 7 after cleanup and everything like that.
You kept thinking that this is day 1 of 3.
Yeah.
For me, being a pregnancy coach and hypnobirthing teacher, I'm thinking there would have been signs along the way to help you understand kind of where you were in the process relatively. So it just has me wondering, other than the amazing prep that you did already do that led you to the idea of having hypnobirth, what preparation did you do for having this?
Yeah, I read hypnobirthing. I also went to an NCT class, which was really very helpful. I feel our NCT leader and coach was very happy that we're having a home birth. And so she did prepare us as to what would happen, essentially. But because of my colleague having a 3-day birth, and also the fact that Natasha moved really rapidly and we didn't see the mucus plug, I couldn't tell where we were. And also her contractions were very close together. So I knew we were close, but again, the mucus plug was the thing I was looking for. And I think it just dissipated in drips and drabs. But once the doulas were there, we were fine.
Yeah. There are 2 interesting points for me there. One, yes, we have these milestones that we talk about when it comes to labour and birth. You're looking out for this and this and this. But in a way, that's kind of problematic because a lot of the time it doesn't happen in that order.
Facts.
Some people have a gush where their waters break and then their contractions start. Yeah. Other people, the contractions start and then their waters break and they do so slowly. So this thing of birth being linear and looking the same for everybody, it's really not true. And it is something where the person who's birthing needs to trust in their body. And the people supporting them, you need to be listening to them as well. It kind of touches on the point about the reasons why you may potentially not want to go too far down the spectrum. Right. Because you could do a million courses, but in that moment, with emotions high and with people's bodies acting as differently as they do, you never know what you're going to be confronted with at the time and how your birth is going to go. My second point is that it really does help to have that birth assistance. And it doesn't necessarily need to be somebody who's in the medical field. You had a home birth midwife booked, but in the moment you felt so safe and things were progressing so well that you didn't really feel the need to call them. I'm not sure exactly how common that is, but it is certainly something that I came across when I was doing my dissertation. It's something that happened to me as well. We didn't end up calling the midwives either because things were going along beautifully.
Yeah.
And the fear then that was coming up for me was, if I call the midwives, will it change the dynamic in the room? Will it change the dynamic in the house? Will it change how I feel in myself and how safe I feel? And therefore, will things actually slow down?
If you think about it, you wouldn't invite a stranger to your house for dinner. Most people don't do that unless you run a supper club. And it's the same thing for birth. A woman is in her most vulnerable state. A man is in his most alert state, protective state. And so you don't know what midwife you're going to get. All the books I've read, the NCT courses I've been on, the woman feeling safe, connected, in tune, aligned, feminine is so important for all the natural hormones to work. And so for us, things were going so well. And we had screened our doulas, they had screened us as well. So we knew the cast of the play. If you get a random person on stage that doesn't know the lines, doesn't know the energy, may have a bit of slapstick comedy, maybe too serious, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need to make sure that the vibe might be thrown off and doubt would enter the woman's mind, my wife's mind. And so that's why when we were swimming along really nicely, there was no need for an extra cast member in that production.
I hear you. So we're going to play a little game, which is for both the listeners and for you, a word association game. I'm going to say 5 words and I am asking the listener, and you say what word comes immediately to mind. Baby.
Love.
Home.
My mum.
Hospital.
Racism. I've got stories about that as well.
Love.
Commitment.
Vagina.
Temple.
So you mentioned racism when I said hospital. Why is that?
So I used to party in the area I live in now, and I know it's a very racist area anyway. Fast forward 20 years, we're going to the hospital for scans, and Natasha said, Michael, can you come with me for a particular one? I said, absolutely fine. So we are in the waiting room, and the receptionists are being disrespectful, racist. The receptionist is white to another white woman because the woman is Eastern European. And I said, wow, if you can be racist to a white person, we have no hope. Because we know the statistics. And when my wife was pregnant, it was 1 in 5 women die during pregnancy or childbirth, black or brown. I think actually brown was 3. And that was during our time. I think now it's come down to
3-ish now. So on paper, it's looking good. I hear that it's apparently because just generally more people are passing, unfortunately. But it's still a very small number of people passing, but apparently that's why the number is down.
Yeah. So I was seeing that in action where the lack of regard, the lack of humanity offered to another woman based on the accent and culture, I was like, we can't do this. So that's why we wanted to make sure that any miscommunication, any assumptions, any intentions, negative or otherwise, are removed from the situation. And that's why we chose a home birth, because I can't give my most prized possession to a system or a hospital that would speak to another person of their skin hue, the same disregard and disrespect. I can't do that to my wife.
When you went into that appointment, you already had it in mind that you wanted a home birth. Yeah. That experience, was that the key point that you thought, this has made me realise I definitely want a home birth?
Yes, 100%. And I'll say that the key thing is I noticed a few archetypes in the hospital. It's not to say that all white women will have this intention or have this mindset towards a black woman. What I'm saying is that all it takes is a miscommunication, a misdiagnosis, or just an oversight for it to lead somewhere where it's not meant to be. However, you also get the similar things in the black world as well, where you would get a Caribbean or African auntie that also has been colonized in the mind and would say, oh, my auntie gave birth with this or this or this, and I know better, and you should respect me because I'm older than you, and therefore what I say goes. And they don't have a listening to someone based on their age, based on their experience, or based how it's done in their home country or whatever. And so I'd seen many of those archetypes, and I did not want to have that situation. I wanted it to be one based on respect, trust, and most importantly, love. So that's why those are the things I'd seen in the hospital that I was like, we can't do this.
Yeah.
We can't do this.
No, that makes complete sense. I remember during my first birth, I had that experience where there was an auntie, an older lady, who basically manhandled me
Yes.
while I was in labour.
Yes.
And I just thought, this feels like it's an age thing. I think she feels that I'm younger than I am, or just the mere fact that I'm younger than her. And because she might already see from my surname that I'm African, or she can certainly tell from my skin.
And it's also people closest to you. I'm from Ghana. Ghanaian auntie will say, but this is our culture. So wouldn't give me the same listening as she would a white woman, who she will hold with 100% respect and reverence, because she knows if anything goes wrong, the system will back that person.
It's interesting how people operate in the space, isn't it, depending on who we're in front of. So jumping now to advising people who may want to do what you guys did, what would you say is a top tip for having a home?
First of all is you guys need to do the same amount of research together. Think of it as date nights, but just making sure that your content is around birthing. 100% all the documentaries and podcasts that I mentioned, Through Line, Before Row, The Physician's Crusade, Watch the Business of Being Born. I think there's actually now a TV series as well. Go and interview doulas and just be open to it. Even if you want to have a hospital birth, be open to having a doula, because most men have not been raised with the vocabulary and with the identity of being all you have to be in the most dangerous, vulnerable, beautiful moment in both of your lives. And then finally, I would also say that make sure you have warmed up your tribe, your nearest and dearest, for aftercare. When we brought all the babies to the NCT as of our closing ceremony, and we went round, the horror stories we heard after the birth. We were in bed by 7 a.m. with our baby. They were in hospital for 3, 4, 5, 6 days with very bright, harsh lighting on morning and night. Nurses speaking to them in whatever way because they might have forgotten a nappy. Being chastised by certain nurses for not being able to bottle feed or breastfeed, inability to bathe. And it was just the fact that, the most risky part has been done. The aftercare is important. And I believe that aftercare is just as important. And that can lead to a lot of trauma for women. We heard from couples that were put in hospital for 3 days. You just realize that, the NHS is a very cautious beast. And also I'm very grateful for the NHS. I'm not trying to badmouth the NHS at all. But what I would say is, because the most risky bit has been done, there hasn't been a lot of investment. It's not about care, it's about investment into the aftercare of women that have just given birth.
If you were given access to a billboard for a day, it was to inform people about home birth, what image and caption would you choose?
It will be an image of a woman having a home birth, surrounded by their very warm, connected, inviting, but yet protective space. Her in deep contraction, but with the caption saying, "There's always a last contraction." Because I think a lot of people think this goes on forever, and it doesn't. It doesn't. And there's spaces between the contractions. What keeps you conscious is actually having a loving, essentially a curated environment that you can rely on and just focus on task at hand.
Yeah.
I know as a man that will never ever experience this kind of pain. Who am I to talk about this? That will be my image. And if I had a second billboard, I'll give it to a woman and say, you create the image, because who am I to talk?
Bless you. Well, then that leads quite nicely into my fatherhood question. Do you think that having a home birth specifically impacted you as a father?
100%. You could go from the most scary time in my life, and it does not say that was an experience, but as a man that's never been through it, I had these concerns because I don't know how long the string is. So I did have those concerns, being anxious, and it's something that is there for both of us. We've never done this before. However, to be in that home birth environment with the people you have selected as your cast for this amazing West End debut, to know that you can go from the chaos to the beauty, serenity, oscillate between those two in a place where with no judgment, to washed in your own bath, your house is smelling as it should smell, sponsored by Jollof Rice, in your bed with your amazing new life, and that's in reach of a 2-minute walk. That made me go from all those confusing and beautiful emotions to serenity in going upstairs.
Yeah.
So 100%.
Amazing. You had a massive impact on you as a father. Amazing. Thank you so much, Michael. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
I currently cover the cost of this podcast, so if you could do something that is free for you, it would mean I can get some sponsors. Woohoo! Click like or subscribe or share this podcast or an episode with someone whose life could genuinely positively be affected by hearing these conversations. Thank you so much. Mwah.